Good afternoon, Scott Baker.
Mikey, how are you today?
Great, thank you. And you?
I'm excellent. It is, we're live here on Tuesday, December 30th, 3 p.m. Eastern Time. Thanks for everybody tuning in for Lead Better. We like to talk about leadership, particularly the admired leadership field note of the day. And today is about expanding your options. And this is specifically around the idea of decision making. And then, we get this phrase has come up a couple of times in a couple of different variations in the last couple of weeks. The idea of a set, right? So there's a decision set, or I can't remember what the other one was. Honestly, there was something. Wasn't there another one recently where the phrase was a set? So I don't know that we often use that terminology. Do you use that terminology?
No.
In regular life? Like if you were with the family, where are we going to go to dinner? Well, what is it? What's our decision set look like tonight? Right. But it is a good way of organizing the thinking around this thinking.
Yeah. No, it is. I've not heard that term. We do often do that.
And in fact, I'm sorry. I'm just going to keep interrupting you. Try to say something again, and I'll do it. I'll jump in. In this one, it doesn't say decision set. It says option set.
Option set.
Right. Option set. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, I'm done talking.
Yeah. So my son has moved back to the Dallas area. He has started with an option set of 8 different apartments to look at, and from that narrowed it down to a class of 3 in the option set now, based on. And today has decided which apartment in Uptown Dallas he is actually going to be moving into.
Right.
So I wonder, because this is the first time I've seen a few of these things. There's 3 that are listed here near the end. I'm really excited about the second one because I've never heard of it quite this way before.
And these are questions that we're going to be raising and explaining. Everyone listening today, even if you never read the field note, you will kind of get the 3 questions you could ask that would change your thinking and make you a better decision maker. That's a big promise for the next 13 minutes.
It is. Now, in this particular type of decision making, we should clarify by saying we're mostly talking about one-way decisions. So with two-way decisions, they're easily reversible. And so we're not plaguing you with all kinds of additional frameworks or processes on how to apply decision-making when it comes to two-way decisions. Things that you can make the choice, and if it doesn't work out, it's not that big of a deal for you to reverse the decision, reverse course, make another. But there are a handful of decisions, maybe only one a year, but when it feels like those decisions are not easily reversible, it's going to cause a big headache if we have to make the choice and then reverse course on it. That I don't know, when we think about like the number of one-way decisions that we have, I don't know that I've had a one-way decision come up for me, even in the last 6 months. Organizationally, we might be at the cusp of a one-way decision here, but that we're making as a group, right? And so some of those things might have even prompted the idea around some of these, but they don't come up very often.
Right?
They really don't.
Yeah, and I mean, and there's a scale there on one-way versus two-way decisions, because some decisions are a little more one way. I mean, you could walk them back, but it does just get hard. And you don't want to make the wrong bet and to be like, all right, we got to walk that back and we got to go down this other path. That certainly is the case.
I love thinking of it in one way or two way versus, because prior to that, it's like high stakes and low stakes decisions was the way that I would think about decisions. But thinking about it in terms of like, well, what makes something high stakes? You're going another layer deeper to say it's a one-way decision is the thing that makes it high stakes, not just the dollar amount associated with it.
Well, all right. So the fun part in the field note where it kind of says, all right, there is a way here that the best leaders come up with the options that are not obvious. And that's where you say, oh, yeah, because I could probably sit here and think of like, well, yeah, I should probably do this, this, or this. And I don't know exactly how you came up with the 8 different apartment options for your son or what the criteria were. Right. And I actually do think that like apartment selection is not a bad both real instance and a metaphorical sort of framework for exactly what we're going to talk about. But let's kind of walk down this path and see where we go. Because in general, I do agree. Like in general, I agree with the field note saying better leaders tend to have a good lineup of options. They tend to realize that bad decisions are made from stuff that you just didn't know yet. And if you kind of go with that first choice, which is the problem, people will be like, well, here's the thing, and this seems to make a lot of sense. And now you start to get locked against these other new ideas. Right. So we get to these ideas, and they're pretty helpful, right? So the first question, these are all questions you would ask. And it's not just what would X do, meaning X being like, well, what would Sam Altman do? Like, or think of like some business, leader that you think seems to have, their pulse on the future. It's more about actually in your field, right? An industry competitor, somebody who is you really respect in your area. And you would just say, well, what would they do here? Mm-hmm. And you and I have different backgrounds in media and marketing, and we might be, I don't know, we could say, what would Seth Godin do here, right? What would Donald Miller, do in this situation? How would they frame this? And sometimes that's a very helpful way of doing it.
Right. And so to get even more specific is maybe asking a question. You made this decision recently. What is your biggest regret from the fact that you chose the option that you chose? Right?
Yes.
And asking people, because if you make a list of regrets, then you're able to look at, that's something I definitely don't want to live with.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
But unless you're actually thinking about it from that, what are the regrets point of view, then maybe you don't really have. So on the apartment hunting kind of thing, my son and his fiance, who are getting married in May, they are going to be signing a 1-year lease on a place, and their initial thought is it's going to be halfway between the two places that we're living, right? So if that's the primary way of thinking about our main thing is convenience for the both of us being halfway between our two jobs. Okay, well, what are all the regrets that are going to be coming as a result of you making that the highest priority? And is there somewhere in this conversation where we're like, maybe geographically being halfway between your two jobs is not the thing that you should be thinking of as priority number one. And that's really the one thing that we probably would want to get ourselves jogged out of as we're brainstorming up all our options. Maybe our top priority, it really shouldn't be our top priority. And the only way to get to that is by thinking about all the regrets, right?
Yes, right.
Do you want to be within walking distance of a grocery store? Oh, the convenience of food is a good thing to consider here, right? And there's all kinds of other ways to get at that.
Yeah. And okay, so with the idea of what would a respected person do in my situation? Second question, how could I guarantee a terrible outcome? Like, what would be the decision I would make that would just be full of regret, awful? And then invert it, start working it backwards from there. And the third question is, and I'm just getting them all out here on the table, if I couldn't choose any of these, if it was locked against me, if the board said you can't do any of these 4 options, well, then what would I do then? Where would I go? What would I start thinking about? What would I start sort of listing as new ways of even gauging new options? So when you have that, all of a sudden you start kind of you see this through a lens that expands your list. And kind of to the first one, I remember Derek Sivers talking about that he has 3 sort of key mentors in his life that he goes to when he really has a decision like this. And the interesting thing as he tells it is that he says, I frame this question to them and I get into some real detail about it. And then I kind of see the clarity of what they're saying. But he never actually talks to them, and in fact, he says one of them never doesn't even know he exists.
Yes, right. Yeah,
right?
but that's something that stands in the way from you having a mentor. That doesn't necessarily mean that you stand in the way, right?
Yeah, just exactly.
You've never met the person, you can still have them as a mentor. Why not?
But by the way, side note on mentors. There had been a little bit of discussion around Andrew Huberman's recent conversation with Twyla Tharp. And I went back and listened to that. I never had read her book when it came out, but a lot of people talked about it. And the interview is 2.5 hours long, but it's exceptionally good. But she talks about the idea that she doesn't like the idea of the mentor. She loves the idea of the apprentice. She's like, I'm not sure that how much you're going to learn from me as a mentor, but I'm going to put you to work, and you as an apprentice, you will teach yourself as you are around me. Like
So
you're going
her
to just
view of mentorship is more teacher in role than.
Well, it's actually, I mean, there is that. Like, she's like, look, when she's in the gym even at age 84 at 5 a.m. every morning for hours.
Right.
And days off. No, we're 7 days a week. I mean, this is just how she's lived for all of her entire life. But she's like, when the dancers come to something that she has said is a rehearsal, she's already expecting that you have done your work. Right. You've already warmed up. You've already put in hours. You've already been through all of the things. You're coming to do the specific things that she's working on with you as a professional. But if you're around her, right, the idea that she's like, this is not like, can you be my mentor? And then that gives her sort of the power to be like, here's what I need you to do. And she's like, no, you're the apprentice. You're coming in and it's almost kind of like the image we'd have from some old fashioned story of the gruff mentor who like really doesn't even want to teach you, but somehow you just kind of pester them and you end up being, better than the master because you just kind of worked hard. I love that idea, right? So in this, you can start doing that. Like you might even say in a creative capacity, what would Twyla Tharp do in this situation? And you'd have a lot to work with.
Right. I suppose that framework works well if you're a plumber, right? Like, which is where, the trades are where apprenticeship actually started, like the term. But to say that we will do this with all fields is a difficult kind of way to kind of wrap your mind around. How can you be an apprentice to someone who you've never met before, right? All of that is a mental exercise. I would like to think that even if I was working in a trade and I couldn't find a real master in their field, that there might be a way that you could still live up to it in the trade that you're working to try to get to the point where, they are giving you good decisions, even though you've never met before, right? There's no reason not to think that.
I don't think that it's just the trades, and I don't know that what we're doing is not a trade in some respects. But one of the first things when I, right out of college, had a job at CBS News in New York City, and I didn't even know what I was doing, or I wasn't even positive why I was there. And the guy that I reported to, the head of the Northeast Bureau at that time, he was going to go through his process of calling all the people in the network that he needed to call each day, stations around the Northeast and all of these things. And my job was to listen to how he did it again and again and again. The small little ways that he would engage the person, the way he would pause, the way he would ask questions, the way that he would leave a window open, the way that what promises he would make to them, all of those little things. Caught better than taught, and you had to do it over and over again. So it's not just Euro Dreams of Sushi, and you've got to make the rice for 10 years, right? So there are ways that you do this. There's a master storyteller that I know who's coming to Pittsburgh in a month. I will just go and listen, right? I think there's so many things that you can gauge in that way, and you can have that drill in this decision making. What would so-and-so do in this same situation?
Now, let's talk about reverse brainstorming. Because I've never heard this particular term for what this thing is, but I love the idea, right? So instead of saying, okay, we've got this initiative or we've got a decision that's coming up, we need to understand what the problem really is. We need to know how to best address it once we decide what the problem is. So let's take a couple of brainstorming stages in this and really think about it. If you're ever stuck, let's ask the question in a completely different way, right? How can I guarantee a terrible or undesirable
exactly
outcome?
Right. Yeah.
And sometimes, sometimes even inside of a customer service process that you're in, you're trying to make a phone call to get some satisfaction on something that has happened with a service or a product that you have. You sometimes feel like if they designed this specifically to make it the worst possible way possible, this is exactly how they would do it, right? So sometimes when you think about the way that people actually design a real thing as if they reverse brainstormed a horrible outcome for their people. And I don't know how that actually ends up working that way, but I love it for the sake of actually coming up with what is the best.
Well, and I do think that you could say, look, if we did this, or if you were thinking, what could guarantee a bad outcome? You'd be like, well, we didn't plan for this, or we didn't budget for that, or I didn't bring on the right experts to help here. And sometimes it is that reverse working it backwards in the timeline. And I'm used to that from my days in television news, where you would back time your show. Like you have to be off the air by a certain time. And I used to teach this in decision making myself in seminars, where I would say, think about the goal that you want to get to. And you can say, all right, I need this to happen. Let me think of all the obstacles in the way, but let me go backwards and start thinking in reverse. And I'm going to come up with different obstacles. I'll start seeing things differently. It's the reference we have to the idea that we've talked about, where you think of the trophy moment, like you just won the big game, the confetti's coming down. Well, 20 minutes before that looks terrible. Like that's where pressure is, and it's chaos, and it's catastrophe. And it's like, well, what does that moment feel like? Well, a way to answer this first question is, how would I guarantee a good outcome? I'm not prepared for the moment when all of it falls apart, just with the finish line in sight.
Right.
So
and then
let's think through what that looks like.
In some situations, it becomes very practical. Like say, for instance, that you have $2 million to spend on an upcoming ad campaign that you want to put together.
Okay.
And you want to have the idea of like, okay, we're going to combine our internal marketing team with this external group that we're going to hire. Let's imagine the worst possible way that it could go, where it's actually a waste of $2 million.
Sure. Right.
Why would you put yourself through that kind of exercise? I think exactly how the field note is saying, it opens up a world of possibilities for you to say,
yes,
okay,
exactly
let's
right.
do that. Let's definitely not do that. Oh, I didn't even realize that was a pitfall I may have been able to step in. And it's really clarifying for you to be able to go through that exercise there.
Yeah. Well, and the last one on if you couldn't take any of the choices on the table, what would be the choice? Like if you had then just said, whatever you've learned to your son who looked at 8 apartments, but you can't have any of these. They're all gone. People took them all.
Right.
Well, what did you learn from this that would say, what's number 9 look like? Like, is number 9 now very different?
Yes. And what it really does is helps you to reframe the entire decision process. And maybe that's what you might need, right? Is to just be like,
right.
My whole approach was wrong. And so therefore, what would be the next way? And all the advantages that come from a new way of thinking about that are helpful in that one question. It's fantastic.
Yeah. But in the end, the thing that I kind of feel through this field note is that the good leader is not only patient, but actually has that ability to kind of hang with the ambiguity a bit through all of these questions. And most people can't handle that. And I think that part of what I have found in moments of good and bad decision making in my own life is when I've been able to kind of do exactly what this is saying, look at a wider option set. Can you keep in track in mind, like here are 8 different things, and here's where each one of those 8 could go. And there's this and there's that and here. And that if you really think through that, if you do the work, you're going to make pretty good decisions. And I would say that whenever I've done that, I don't have a lot of regrets over 40 years of adult life where I say, I should have just gone with my gut on the first one.
Right.
It usually wasn't true.
Yeah, I think the title or the clincher in another field note that we called was called savoring the problem, learning to save. And I think that's what this does for us here.
The problem is your friend in a way. The obstacle is the way.
Right, exactly. Fantastic. Okay, thanks very much. We'll see you tomorrow.